Welcome back. I'm Connie Sokol, your host, and I am delighted today to have one of our very own Disciple Thought Leadership Circle women with us in this series of how women are doing their personal message that they feel compelled to share to benefit others and doing it as a Disciple Thought Leader. So we're going to talk today with our guest, Lyndsey VanSickle. So happy to have you here.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
We are so excited to talk about something that can kind of be a little bit of a taboo subject. Oh, yeah, especially for moms, but especially moms of teens, because teens especially deal with this. And this is being able to let go of your stuff, the things you don't want to be able to share, but do need to share, the things that you want to say, but you feel that you can't say. And that's the stuff and the power and the beauty of letting go of that stuff that we keep inside is absolutely magical. And Lyndsey is going to share with us her journey today, which has been phenomenal, of being able to speak to teens and speak to moms of teens to be able to help us all move forward and let go of what's not serving us. So just as a quick little bio of sweet Lyndsey VanSickle, she has a degree in behavioral science and she is a certified life coach. And she is especially proud of being the author of the Black Book. And what is the Black Book? Well, we're going to tell you in just a little bit. And it is fantastic. My daughter uses it and I am loving it. And so is she. So let's just jump in and start kind of back a little Sound of Music back to the very beginning, a very good place to start. Let's start with this. Where did this come from? This whole thing of letting go of this negative stuff, the things that can't be said, because this is kind of, especially in a religious culture or especially for women, it's not okay to be able to share those negative feelings of anger, frustration, or despair or things like that. Where did this start from that you were able to start saying, you know what, we need to get rid of this. We need to be open about this. Where did this start?
Yes. Okay. I can so relate to that. But first, anytime I talk to you, I just feel so great. Like, thank you so much for saying all that about the Black Book. And it just makes me so happy.
You bet.
Um, so, okay, when you talk about women and just feeling the weight and how hard it is to look at things, like that just rings so, so true to me. For the longest time, I really, really believed I had more issues than anyone else. I mean, I believed that too many things, I'd like, you know what I mean? When there's like the quota, like you can have this many issues and then like you'll be okay. But like if you go past here, it's just not really going to work out, you know? So I just felt like I was really the only one. And I had kind of closed the door on that it's okay to like move past them or look at them because I had just believed this whole thing that like this is just what life is. Um, and I remember like looking back and thinking about times just in life when I was even just like in high school or driving in the car. I went to hair school back in the day. And I just remember spending so much of that time just so mad, like just angry that things were the way they were, right? And just super pissed off and just wanting it to be different and angry. And I was totally justified. Like, that's the funny thing is we're all so justified. We go through so much and there's so much pain. Um, but I just, I really couldn't stand the thought of actually stopping and looking at what any of it was. You know, I got really, really good at traveling and I look back and it's so funny because I'm like fight or flight. For me, it was always like flight, like, let's just get out of here. Let's do something new. If I just leave and go somewhere fun or just like eat enough or just be with friends enough or watch enough Netflix, then I'm going to be okay. Right.
Oh, yeah.
But the thing that I was really, that became critical for me later in my life is like those things that seemed like I should for sure not look at. Like, that's so dangerous. Like every red flag is raised where you really believe like something bad's going to happen to me if I look at the stuff I've been through. That was really the key. And that's like what I figured out. And so that's what I became so passionate about. And that's where, you know, the Black Book came about that we'll get into.
So it sounds like, every woman feels that way. And every woman has stuff. Every person has stuff that we carry. And it's those rocks in the backpack, right? And you're saying, stop. put the backpack down, take a look at the rocks and just be objective about, look at them. Say, yeah, that really did stink. That really was a problem. That really did hurt. Being able to take a moment to do that. So as you did that, as you started to sort of break open with that, I know you had some issues and some concerns about after having a baby, you had postpartum depression, and that probably exacerbated that. But sometimes those things can become a catalyst. Did that kind of become a catalyst for you to be able to move forward on this, to get things out and help others?
Yeah, it really did. So when I would hear the life analogies sometimes of like, just be yourself or just let go, like, I'm one of those people, I just want to flip someone off when they say that stuff because I'm like, that's great for you. Like, good for you, you know? But a lot of those things, like, I didn't conceptually just feel it. So, like, just backing back up a little bit. I just remember one day, well, so first of all, this morning I'm driving all my kids to school because they all missed the bus. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to be on Connie's podcast. So I'm talking out loud in the car, just some things, some ideas. And by this time, everybody's already dropped off to school, and I just have my 5-year-old in the back seat and I'm talking out loud and I'm like, there's really no pain that can come from writing, even though it feels like it. And she's like, actually, Mom, I got stabbed by a pencil when I was writing before. I was like,
What a sweetie.
I just started laughing and I was like, should I explain how this is all different than that? But it honestly drove the point home in such a funny way. It really is so uncomfortable. And I just remember sitting on my bed one day and um, I was having some postpartum, and honestly, I had just gone through a lot of different traumas. I hadn't looked at stuff from being a teen, and I could just feel the weight of all of that.
Mm,
Right? Because, like you're saying, that it's heavy, that
mm.
emotion and that stuff, those rocks you're talking about in the backpacks, it's all just heavy weight, even though I didn't know what it was. Um, but I could feel it. And I said, of course, I was writing in my journal, like the boring details of the day. So I just said, for this one time, I'm just going to rip a page out of this nice leather journal and I'm just going to write whatever I want to say. And it felt so scary. Like, I tiptoed over to my bedroom door and I like peeked outside and I locked the door because I was like, this is so bad, you know? Like, it felt so bad. And I think Satan does that to us, to actually look at those rocks and take them out and see what's actually there. And I honestly had never done it. I didn't, it was kind of an outer body experience. Like, you know what I mean? When you're kind of pulled to do something, but you're
Mm.
not sure why. So I'm sitting on my bed and I'm just kind of like writing whatever comes. I'm not sure what I'm doing. I don't think a whole lot about it. I ripped it out, walked to my outside garbage. I'm like, this is so weird. I shredded it all up, threw it away. Um, then the next day and a few days later, I start to feel those feelings come up and that weight, right? I start to feel the heaviness and I recognized it. And I'm like, I start pulling for my nice journal again. And I start writing in there. And I went through that whole journal, pages and pages. And then I started using like super cheap notebooks.
Because you're like, I'm shredding this. I'm not using a nice leather journal.
I know. And I've shredded through so many now because it wasn't rocket science. It was just letting my brain finally, like, it felt like the biggest relief. It like sometimes tears me up now because I'm like, my body and brain already knew what was there. Like, everything we've gone through, we already know, right? No matter how hard we're trying to ignore it. And
Exactly.
so it will feel like the biggest relief to your mind and body to just finally say, like, hi, you went, like, we went through this. This is hard. This is here. Ah, like, your body's like, thank you. Finally. Like, my
For
God.
no acknowledging me and my part in this and being a steely-eyed missile woman, right?
Yeah.
Yes. And that relief, I mean, you can just feel it from you right now, just feeling that relief and that sense of letting go. And it really was let go. You wrote it, you shredded it, and you didn't go back and dig it up. You let go of it. It reminds me so much of, I remember listening to a talk, and it's in Idaho, and it was a landfill, and they ended up putting an airport over the top of it in this beautiful community park. And the speaker was saying, would you go back and try to dig down to find your stuff in that beautiful park and to start digging into the grass where the beautiful flowers are, right? It's ridiculous. But as women, we do that. We go, but really is that let go? Or and we kind of go back to it and go back to it. So I love this idea of shredding and letting go. So how did that fundamentally change you and your relationships and how you went about life?
Well, it's so true. It still seems like a miracle to me that how could it be let go, right? I'm just writing it. Like I didn't have this huge lengthy process and I had done a ton of counseling before and that's great too. Um but I feel like how it affected my life is because I could give it voice and it's such a miracle. It really only needed a voice and that acknowledgement and then it could kind of loosen, breathe, and just release. And it's still such a miracle to me. I am shocked that it can just like slough off on its own because I wasn't holding on so tight, right? Just gripping and gripping on for once. I was finally seeing it. So in my life from there, that's when I really started to be able to kind of sit with myself and look at some really hard things I'd been through. I'd had postpartum with 4 kids. I'd been through some traumas as a teenager and just, depression and anxiety for a long time. Like that stuff I thought was just too much. Um, Starting that process of looking at it, it kind of continued on. That was about 6 years ago.
Wow. And how has it been in that process? How often were you shredding and how often do you do that now where you write out those all the things that you just feel like I could never say to any other person. I would die if they saw it in my head or even knew that I thought these thoughts and feelings, right? But you write it all out, no censorship, no self-edit, and then just shred it and let it go. How often were you doing it and how often do you do that now?
Totally. That's just how it is. Um, I would honestly, I went on and off with it. And then I realized after a couple years, I was like, stop. Like, this is what's really, really actually making a big difference for me and helping me to feel free. And so now it's funny, but I write honestly like almost every day because anything that I write letters to people or any little thing, a lot of times it's shorter now than it used to be, just because it's like it just feels so good to just acknowledge and see it. And I'm like, oh, even this morning, I'm writing in my regular journal about this weekend experience and these positive things. And then I ripped a piece out of it because I didn't have my black book right next to me. And I just wrote just some stuff that I was like, why is this coming up? Blah, 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 blah. And then my brain's like, oh, thanks for saying that. Thanks for acknowledging. It was short. So really, I think 2 times a week is really enough to really start getting all the things out. That's kind of where I've gone with it now.
That makes so much sense because it is a process, I would imagine. I mean, with counseling, with things like that, that when you bring stuff up, it is a clearing out and it takes time to sort of recalibrate, so to speak. So it does take time once you bring stuff up and you may be tired, you may feel yourself feeling a lot of different feelings. I do the spa wrap at this spa college and it's a
Mhm.
like a detox wrap and they say all the time, like, watch for, you've just released a lot of toxins into your system, drink a lot of water, get rest, make sure that you're attending to the release process, right? And that reminds me a lot of what you're talking about when you do the shredding, maybe paying attention to that of if you feel the need to nap or if you feel like you need to rest a little or go a little slower for a day or something while your mind, body, soul processes this letting go. I think that's beautiful. So I love that 2 times a week. And it makes sense to me. Have you found this helping you with your children? Because I'm thinking this is children when they're bugging you all the time, but when you sit down for 20 minutes and you play with them, they'll play for an hour happily without you. It's just they want that attention. It sounds to me like your body and your mind and soul are trying to get your attention and saying, "Hey, I just need to get rid of this. Will you just please do a dump, right? A brain dump, an emotional dump, just get this out." And so it sounds to me like that's just kind of a principle that actually plays out. Have you found how this helps your relationship with your kids, your spouse, with others?
Yes, exactly. It just isn't the big ordeal like you think it will be to look at it, right? You're so right. It's just the kid that one way it really, really affects my relationships is I spent a lot of time getting really just super aggravated a lot of the time. Or I could get mad at my kids a lot easier. And of course, we're
Mm,
still moms and we do that, but I honestly feel like I thought it was their fault or his fault or just
mm.
so much stuff has built up. And so instead, I have this place that's safe, that I trust, where I can really be myself. if I before I didn't feel safe, if I don't feel like safe to really say what I'm feeling, then how would I get to that point of ever looking at the stuff that I needed to, right? Because it's heavy and it's dark. You're not just going to say it. And that's where the
Absolutely.
writing comes in.
Absolutely. And it feels like I know that phrase, if we don't, like water finds a way, if we don't get it out, we act it out. Right. So it sounds to me like you're getting it out on paper in a way that doesn't damage other people, but it still acknowledges and gets the cleaning out process, that sort of debris, emotional debris, gets it out so that you can function more fully and have a cleaner lens. So that when you're looking at your children, your spouse, your neighbors, whatever, you're not being so reactive. You're being able to see it for what it really is. That's just beautiful, all from just writing this down. So, have you taught this to other people? Have you started teaching this as far as a thing of like, hey, this is how you can get this out?
Yes, just because I've gotten obsessed with it. And I realized that when I was so angry and mad about how things were, I just realized there's no way I could start to see all the stuff that really started to help me feel like myself.
Mm.
Like, um, people say be yourself, and it's so hard to understand that, but it feels like yourself once you're actually seeing like that child and all the things that really want to be said. And I realized there wasn't anything so dark and so scary that didn't feel lighter once I started to just say it. And so then I could actually, I really realized I wasn't, self love was really a hard thing for me for a long time. And I started to really love myself with this writing, and it was crazy. And I didn't feel like I was loving myself in spite of all my junk and issues and darkness. I really started to feel like it was the sweetest thing. Like I was loving myself because of all of that. I could see the strength, and I could really see through a better lens all of the stuff I had been through and how much it was affecting me. And I started to feel compassion for myself rather than
Mm.
so much anger.
I love that. And that's another phrase that you hear a lot. Oh, just love yourself. And self
Ugh.
love is so important. And you're like, okay, but it's this side of the chasm and that's the other side of the chasm. And how do I get there? Right? How do I bridge that gap? And I
Mm.
love that you have found the beauty of acknowledging and embracing that so-called negative part of us, which is really just expressing the feels about what's happened to us, being able to get that out, acknowledge it, and give ourselves a, an emotional virtual hug, that it just melts, it just goes. And I love this. You obviously, you have this beautiful, I wish you can see if you're not watching the video, but that this beautiful countenance and this kindness, and you have this receptivity to knowing truth that is so beautiful, that it seems to me you could not have had if you hadn't gotten cleaned out that lens, that sort of spring cleaning on the windows, our house windows, that, once you clean those out, you can just see so much better. For those that are listening, um, can you share just what's one thing that you would encourage them to start today? What's one thing that you would say, this, if you want to feel this way, if you want to feel greater self love, if you want to feel more self acceptance, if you want to get rid of this stuff and improve your relationships, what's the one thing they could start with today?
Okay. So, okay, I'm super excited to get into that, but I just have to say, when you were talking, it just reminded me of what my affirmation is right now. It's so funny, but this is what I say every morning. I allow the awfulness and the dread and whatever to get to my long-term goals.
I love that.
Because still, I've been doing this for a long time. I've done so much self-work, right? We all have. And the thing is, this stuff all comes up for all of us.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I'm like, oh yeah, the dread's normal and all of this because I want to get to my goals. I just had to put that in from what you were saying. I loved what you were saying.
That is a beautiful, simple thing to do, is to choose an affirmation that affirms you to be able to acknowledge that the dark side, right? To be able to acknowledge it and say, okay, I can see that there's good in this, and me being able to acknowledge it and let it go. I think that's a beautiful first step. And I know you also have, for your black book, I know that you have some prompts and some little writing things and things if people want to get started, or they want to kind of put their toe in and go, I don't know about this black book. I want to try it out. I think you have something that they can use for that.
Yeah. So the first step really, and one thing you can do today is really just acknowledge that there even is something more that you're maybe not seeing. Acknowledge that there is a dark side. There is that heaviness. Um, One thing that's helped me is to say, I don't have anything to say. There's not really anything dark I'm feeling, but if there was, what would it be? So
Mhm.
that's uh, in my mind works a lot better when I'm like, no, 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 I'm sure it's not here, but just in case, what would they even be? You know?
Because
And then
that's
my
not
mind,
really my feelings, but if there were,
what could it be? And then, that's a really safe way to stick your toe in and say, okay, well, what might be here if it was? Those things help me a lot. Um, it's nice to have thoughts like that before you start writing to kind of keep your direction going. So I have a few prompts like that I just put on my website that are free, but also I outlined my whole process. I put it into this book called the Black Book that you're talking about. So in here, it has the prompts that are super helpful. A lot of them are phrased in that way that I said. It has the process written down so that you can write, but kind of not feel like you're alone with writing. It talks about other people's experiences, how I do it. And then it talks about, step one is acknowledging, number two is writing, like we just said. And then step three would be the shredding. And that's really the part where you're acknowledging it to yourself and you're seeing it and your body feels the relief. And the fourth step it talks about here, which you talked about a little bit earlier, is just that breathing, like how you would go to the spa, how we have days in between our processing, just to let your body still continue to just process, let go, feel heard. It's like 5 minutes of breathing. I don't even want to call it meditating because then it's like that's too intense. Just to let your body just let go even more. And it's so funny. Our bodies do all the work themselves. Like it knows what to do.
it's so
So
beautiful.
that's
I
the
love that.
process.
And those prompts and that book, I gave it to my daughter who is 16 and I got one from Lyndsey and it was so funny because I was like, well, I wonder if she would like it. And I said, hey, sweetie, she loves cute journal things. And this is like, it's not, I wouldn't say it's cute. I would say it's really, it's pertinent. Like it's on point. I don't know the word. It's just perfect. It's perfect for what it needs to be because it's upbeat, but it's not cutesy in your face, but it's got great information in there. It's got beautiful prompts. Anyway, I gave it to her and I said, flip through it, see what you think. It's got some prompts for writing and stuff like that. Oh man, she took that. I was writing in my journal later on that night because I write before I go to bed. And she was just writing away on her thing. And she's like, Mom, she looked up, she goes, I love this. I was like, oh my word. So for moms out there who are struggling with teens who maybe aren't speaking, aren't sharing, maybe they've shut down, maybe they've kind of gone, like they're dyeing their hair black for some reason or whatever, but maybe they've just kind of gone dark a bit and the moms are kind of like, I don't know how to reach this child.
Yeah.
What would you say as far as using this black book? What would you say?
Well, I'm so, so happy that your daughter felt that if any one person could just feel a place for themselves to write, that makes me so happy. I would tell the moms, um, it's kind of a dark, edgy looking journal because the process is dark and edgy, right? And we hear all the time, to just start to kind of make the negativeness happier. And I think that's a hard thing with our teens too, when we get scared of what's dark and what they're feeling out there. But I would say to not be scared of it, and they'll pick up on that you're not scared of it, right?
Bingo.
And they can start to really feel and see what's there. It's just like, one of the statistics that I've heard recently a lot about suicide is that you think if you talk about it more, people might go through with it more, where it's the total opposite. This talking and bringing light to things can really start to help people to feel heard and seen.
Absolutely.
Um, and you don't need to talk and get all dark, but giving them that space to know you're okay, even with all this, you're totally okay still, you're totally normal, still here. Write it down, feel it, don't block it.
I love that, and I think it's that shame factor that gets it attached to the darker feelings that we feel, And yet it's just an expression of, again, things that we've gone through. So I love that you are opening this dialogue. You're opening a space for there to be a discussion about this. Wow, if one of your teens is acting out and just being rude or snarky or whatever, instead of saying like, what's going on today, being able to say, hey, do you want to take a few minutes and write? Do you want to shred a little? Being able to acknowledge that, hey, we all feel that. And that's what I feel from you is, oh, yeah, that's just all part of this eternal round of our emotions. So what do you want to do with it? Yeah, you can go shred it, or you can go, scream into
Yes.
your pillow or whatever. But there is so many studies on this, the act of writing, from connecting this cognitive to your pen to the paper. It is such a huge piece. And especially in our digital world, we've lost a good chunk of this, even handwriting, right? So I love that you are connecting this process again, because it actually does help. I love this. If women are listening and they're thinking, man, I want to try one for myself and then see if my teen wants to try it, again, low key, right? Because anything that you go, here, I think you should try this black book, then they're going to be like, oh, but what can they do to find it?
I just have them on my website. It's lyndseyv.com. And there's other resources on there. On Instagram too, I have a kind of a community of, it's a safe place. It's a place to kind of look at stuff like this. It's LyndseyV_LYNDSEY. You can
Love.
just reach out. Because, right, they can just say, maybe there's not anything, but if there was, what might it be, you know?
I love that. And for those that are just joining us as we wrap up, I'm going to ask her one last thought that she would like to share. But before that, I just kind of want to wrap up with a couple of the thoughts that she said. I love this, that you were recognizing the heaviness, so that being able to write helped you to recognize when those feelings came. So you weren't knee jerk getting upset at people first. You were saying, wow, I'm feeling this heaviness. What can I do with it? And I love that you said, because I could give it voice. Because you could give it voice, it didn't have power. It didn't have that hold on you, and you were able to let it go. And then I love that you said, doing it even just 2 times a week, even writing letters to people that you never sent, that you shredded and put away, how much that helped. And that doing this actually created a safe space to be myself. I was actually loving myself because of it. And that's such a beautiful connection between, I mean, I know you pray, you read scriptures, you do all of those things. This is another tool that helps us to access that feeling of love and peace and connection. And I love who I am, and I can be myself. So I love this. One last thought, if you wanted to share with women that we haven't been able to cover, is there one thought that you want to leave with them?
I just feel like I just can promise you that I've been talking to so many women now, and we're all feeling like we're the only ones, and we're all feeling like, right? We all are feeling like our stuff is too much. And I'm almost starting to laugh now. The more people I talk to, I'm like, oh my gosh, like we are all in good company and we all have this stuff to look through. We're living in 2021 now, you guys. Like everybody needs to shred. Like everybody needs to look through stuff. Like that's a good thing. That's the name of the game, right? We're here, we're getting bruised, we're going through a lot of bumps, and that's not bad, right? It's good. It's what we need.
And as long as we have those channels, those tributaries, that we can get rid of the dirty water that just feels that way, like this doesn't feel nourishing and clean. If we can get it out, even though it's a part of the process, there's this filtering process. I love that you keep making this point. This is the yin yang. It's part of the process. It's not something that we go, ooh, I want to get rid of it. I'm going to acknowledge it. Yes, I felt that. I feel that. Okay. And now it served its purpose and it's time to let it go. Let's go. So
Yes.
I love that. I love, love, love. For women out there listening, remember, it's Lyndsey V_. If you want to check out her website, Lyndsey V, it's LY, and it has the black book. It has the free download for snippets. So you can give it a little taste test, see if you like it, see how that feels for you. I love it. So appreciate you being with us today and helping us to understand the things that we did not know about letting go, the power that's in that. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much.
And for those listening, as always, if you love this kind of interview, then you go below, rate, review, and subscribe. And if you want freebies from us of finding your purpose, helping you to move forward in your daily life to be able to fulfill it, then check out all the freebies that we have at ConnieSokol.com. We've got TV segments, blog posts, we've got downloads and mini courses and retreats and all kinds of beautiful things for you, whatever stage you're at, to be able to help you move forward and to live your purpose-filled life.